Welcome to Chapter 5, which is covering ethics. In community paramedicine, ethics isn't abstract. It's what guides your choices in someone's living room at 2 a.m. Today, we'll connect classic ethics to real CP problems, those recurrent overdoses, high EMS utilizations, and long game chronic disease support. As we go, keep three questions in mind. What is the right thing? What is the safe thing? And what is the sustainable thing for this patient as well as for the community? This chapter frames how we think before we act. We'll move from principles to playbooks so you can use these things and tips and tricks on your next home visit. Ethics is our playbook for the moments when policy, protocol, and real life do not agree. In community paramedicine, that can mean holding professional boundaries in someone's home or honoring end-of-life wishes when no documents exist. Consider the overdose patients who wake up after we Narcan them and decline transport. We're very familiar with them, but how do we balance autonomy, patients' welfare, and safety together? CP is evolving. There's more autonomy, broader responsibilities, and new ethical dilemmas outside of the ED. You'll navigate capacity assessments after intoxication, confidentiality in tight-knit towns, and a fair use of limited program slots. The mindset shifts from single encounters to longitudinal relationships. What we do today does shape tomorrow's trust with these patients. So here's a goal. Build habits so that ethically right decision becomes your default under stress. Just like our scene size up, ethical reflexes should be trained. So pausing to check decisional capacity before accepting a refusal. Professional language habits matter. Ditch the stigma of frequent flyers in favor of precise, respectful terms such as high utilizer with unmet needs. EMS has a code of ethics in the EMT oath, which was adopted by NAEMT in 1978 and is still very relevant, and we still read it at graduation every year. These declarations center patient welfare, confidentiality, and professional conduct. These are cornerstones for CP visits. In overdose and SUD care, which SUD is short for substance abuse disorder, the spirit of the oath pushes us towards non-judgmental, stigma-free care and harm reduction partnership. So map it to CP, respect dignity at the doorstep, safeguard privacy in small communities, and commit to equity when resources are scarce. We'll keep returning to that oath as our North Star while we navigate those gray areas. A pledge doesn't ensure performance. Systems, culture, and supervision matter. We need supportive policies, clear documentation standards for home visits, structured refusal policies for intoxicated patients, and pathways for warm handoff to treatment. Ethical practice thrives when leaders back you up, especially when you slow down to do the right thing instead of the fast thing. Let's normalize debriefs for value-heavy calls. So fatal overdoses, suspected neglect, non-transport decisions. As we begin, hold 3 CP realities in mind. 1, you are a guest in someone's home. 2, you'll make repeated contact with the same folks. And 3, trust is the treatment before any treatment. Ethics is how we earn and how we keep that trust with our patients. Think of ethics as a compass and guardrails. The compass is our principle, respect, autonomy, the patient's right to choose, aim for patient welfare, do what's likely to help, practice do no harm, avoid causing harm, and uphold justice. Be fair and be consistent. These guardrails are our rules, the laws that we must follow, our clinical protocols, and our agency policies. Every action has a ripple effect. For example, leaving Narcan behind seems simple, but it impacts safety for that person and others, shifts public health outcomes, and raises equity questions about who gets access, and triggers operational steps like documentation, inventory, and follow-up. So always remember to pack your stuff when you leave. Social constructs are the rules and expectations. Powerful groups set about what good care looks like. In community paramedicine, 3 groups shape our choices. First, professional bodies, our state regulators, medical directors, and national standards. These define our scope and our ethical expectation, like real capacity checks after Narcan and non-stigmatizing language. Second, organizations, our agency and partner systems, they write the policies we live by. Narcan leave behind workflows, warm handoffs, documentation, and frequent utilizer care plans. Third, the law, HIPAA, and, when applicable, 42 CFR Part 2 for our SUD records. Good Samaritan protections, mandated reporting, and state constant and refusal rules. Sometimes these layers align and sometimes they pull apart. After a pulse Narcan refusal, the profession tells us to honor autonomy. I'm stumbling with this one. Autonomy with a true capacity assessment. The organizer may strongly encourage transport, and the law won't let us detain a competent adult. The ethical move is to least restrictive safe option. So assess capacity, provide harm reduction education, leave the Narcan, offer MAT resources, consult as needed, and document why. If policy or access gaps show up, like uneven Narcan distribution, flag them for QI so the next patient gets better, more fair care. Maxine Green presses us to think critically before choosing a course of action. Slow is smooth. Pause to gather facts, capacity, risk, social supports, prior encounters, and the patient's goals. Critical thinking disrupts bias. Our frequent flyer becomes the high utilizers with unmet needs, which reframes our plan. Facts first, interpretation second, decisions third. Pictures of care scenes remind us every home is a different microculture, so be observant, not intrusive. Ethics begin with listening, what the environment says as well, not just the patient. Those microcultures can tell you a lot, so be respectful, look for meds on the table, spoiled food, no air conditioning. These are clinical data, so listen to the environment as well as the patient. A world view is your personal theory of everything. So it shapes how you interpret what you see. You can have two CP clinicians that enter the same household and they're going to draw different conclusions. One may see non-compliance and the other may see transportation barrier and food insecurity. Our French philosopher René Descartes, I hope I'm saying that right, he said, I think, therefore I am. In other words, a person's thoughts validate that person's existence. Our thoughts shape what feels real. Be aware of your narrative. Replace won't change with hasn't had a workable plan yet. That shift opens options. Some patients center science, others center faith. Some blend both. Neither stance is provable. Both deserve respect. Use the patient's worldview to power adherence. Invite faith leaders into the home if the patient wants that. Our evidence-based mindset fits CP. We have A1C logs, BP trends, medication reconciliation, overdose risk education. When something seems unexplainable, assume we haven't measured the right thing yet. Ethical theism, this is based on a belief or an acceptance of the supernatural. It goes by many different titles specific to a religion. So the views could be tangible world as evidence of the supernatural being that created it. People who adhere to this world view accept religious texts or scriptures as further evidence of the supernatural. If a patient interprets illness through spirituality, explore how that supports health behavior. Offer, don't impose. Patient-led inclusion can strengthen trust as well as adherence. Postmodernism is commonly described as a broad-scale skepticism of the logic and values that become commonplace during the Enlightenment period. Modernism was a perspective developed in Europe during the mid-16th and early 17th centuries. That period was called Enlightenment. Science and literacy advanced rapidly during this time. The result was an ever-increasing number of people who became skeptical of traditional authoritative institutions telling them what to think. Capabilities of scientists were increasing, which contributed to a gradual decrease in reliance on religion, most notably the Roman Catholic Church, to explain complex or mysterious aspects of that physical world. Modernists embraced the idea of human anatomy, whereby ethical conduct and absolute truth could be realized independent of faith or in obedience to the supernatural. Postmodernism did evolve as a reaction to modernism in the late 19th and 20th centuries. It takes the position that reality exists independent of humanity and challenges the idea that objective methods can fully or accurately describe the whole of reality. Postmodernists contend that reality is a human construct which is influenced by culture, language, and language and culture filter reality. Shame and trauma are common in SUD. Keep that in mind. Use person first, non stigmatizing language and ask them what matters to them today. Postmodernism is grounded in subjective and relativism. All truth and realities are relative concepts. Everyone must define reality for themselves. No one can know another's reality because no two people experience life the same way. Subjective reasoning, there are no universal absolute truths, meaning each person decides for himself or their self what is right or wrong. Issue with postmodernism is crime. If there are no absolutes, no universal truth, there is no absolute right and wrong. If truth is purely personal, what guides action? In EMSCP, we must anchor to these principles and law. Compassion needs boundaries. Kindness doesn't mean anything goes. Ethical theories are prescriptive. They guide what we ought to do. We'll use them like tools. Different jobs, so we use different tools. The greatest good for the greatest number. Sounds like triage, doesn't it? It's very common in healthcare. We should be familiar with it. Triage limited slots to the highest community risk in CP. Maybe those recent overdoses, those uncontrolled CHF, COPD, diabetic patients, the people that call frequently. Keep those slots open for them. Triage in community paramedicine as well. When need outruns our resources, we lean on a Unitarian lens, do the most good for the most people. In overdose spikes, epidemics, or disaster, that might mean prioritizing post-overdose follow-ups, concentrating on Narcan distribution where calls cluster, or scheduling CP visits by risk rather than first come, first serve. But we keep a guardrail. Greatest good. Thinking, can we make quiet suffering invisible? Or that greatest good thinking can make that quiet suffering invisible. The lonely frequent caller who isn't critical today can still be sliding towards crisis. So we pair triage with equity checks and a safety net for individuals who might otherwise be overlooked. Some guardrails aren't optional. Technology says we do the right thing because it is the rule, not because it's convenient. In CP, that looks like truthful documentation, protecting confidentiality, honoring informed refusals after a real capacity assessment, and making mandated reports when required. These duties protect patients and they also protect us. When we feel tempted to cut corners, then we come back to duty. Can't pushes us to act only in ways we'd be comfortable becoming the standard. If we wouldn't want every CP to withhold risk to gain compliance, then we don't. If we wouldn't want every CP to threaten transport to force agreement, then we won't. Patients are ends in themselves and never means to hit a metric. Even under pressure, we avoid manipulation and choose honesty, clarity, and consistency and consent. Relativism reminds us that right and wrong are often shaped by culture and context. We use that to avoid arrogance. Ask, listen, and adapt plans to the patient's world. But context doesn't erase the anchors. Safety, the law, and core principles are still guiding us, especially with overdose risk, minors, or vulnerable adults. In short, meet people where they are while keeping everyone safe. Our own scene reasoning follows a simple flow. Gather facts, name the stakeholders, apply core principles, the anatomy, patient welfare, do no harm, justice. They lay out options, choose and act, then document, then plan, and follow up. Example would be a post-Narcan refusal. We verify capacity, discuss the risk, offer the harm reduction education, leave the Narcan, arrange a warm handoff or to their primary care, create a brief safety plan, and document what we offered and why we offered it. Virtue ethics focus on the clinician you're becoming through repeated choices. We cultivate courage for hard conversations, prudence for good judgment, temperance for healthy boundaries, and justice for fair access. These habits protect us from burnout and cynicism, especially with our high utilizers, and make ethical practice feel like natural instead of forced. Prudence, pause before accepting a risky refusal. Check capacity, conform understanding, and consider a delayed reevaluation. Justice, allocate time and tools by need, not by who is easiest or the most appreciative of your help. Audit for equity across neighborhoods. Temperance keeps compassionate boundaries. Don't exceed scope or promise what the system can't deliver. Boundaries build trust. The fortitude, do the right thing when it's hard, even when no one's looking. Report suspected neglect, speak up about unsafe patterns, and advocate for safer policies. You guys can tell I've been teaching since about 8:30 this morning. My words are no wording. Our ethical practice usually lives between extremes, neither paternalism nor abandonment. In chronic disease work, we blend motivational interviewing with clear safety lines. I won't force care. And here are the non-negotiables that are going to keep you safe. Here's how to reach us if things change. That balanced stance respects autonomy while preventing quiet deterioration that we try to avoid. Respect for patients' autonomy. Healthcare workers must not only commit themselves to ethical conduct, they must also respect the values held by each person they encounter, including that autonomy of each person. So our autonomy is a right of a person to make informed, uncoerced decisions about their body. Community paramedics must consider objectively the anonymous choices of patients, particularly those from different culture. Community paramedics must suppress their own sense of self so as to develop a better awareness of the patient's needs and choices. Avoid paternalism. Paternalism is an act that limits a person's autonomy or liberty. The healthcare workers likely believe they're acting out of benefits, that is, acting in the patient's best interest. We honor informed choices even when we disagree with them. We do that by partnering, not parenting. In overdose care, that means pairing autonomy with harm reduction. We teach safer use strategies, leave the Narcan, name red flag symptoms, and line up a warm handoff for treatment when they're ready. We document clearly and keep the door open for that next conversation to occur. So, practical application of ethics. Community paramedics may have the opportunity to contemplate and debate ethical dilemmas during case reviews, a key part of both continuing education and quality assurance. So offer the opportunity not only to evaluate medical treatment or adherence to protocol, but also to review ethically challenging scenarios. So we practice the moves that we need to do before we run through that next tough scene. So run scenarios on post-Narcan refusals, boundary challenges with frequent callers, and adherence to barriers in our CHF, COPD, diabetes patients. For each case, ask what values were in tension, what did we decide and why, what will we do differently next time. Capture this lesson so the whole team levels up and keep the training going. Here's a quick routine for any tough call that you may come into contact with. So, number one, get the facts. What's happening right now? Vitals, scene risk, capacity, history. Step two, name who's affected: the patient, family, neighbors, your team, the community. Three, use the four principles: respect, autonomy, aim for patient welfare, do no harm, and be fair. Step four, choose the least restrictive safe option. List your choices. Pick the one that keeps people safest while honoring the patient's choice. Step five, document the why. Write what you did and why you chose to do it. Step six, set follow-up. Do a warm handoff, return visit, or a check-in call to close that loop. If emotions are high or intoxication is in play, slow down. When it's safe, delay the decision, reassess later, and call medical control or supervisor early. Use ready lines to keep it respectful and clear, like, I respect your choice. Here's how we can keep you safer tonight. We'll leave Narcan, watch for these red flags, and I'll connect you with your PCP. If anything changes, call us or 911 right away. Keep your work tied to the program so the right thing is the easy thing. Capacity checklist, Narcan leave behind steps, those warm handoffs, and clean documentation templates. Ethics in community paramedicine isn't a speech, it's a habit. We meet people where they are. Protect safety and autonomy, act for patient welfare, stay fair, write it down, and we learn from every call, just like we do in the streets. Do the next right thing today and make it easier for the next clinician to do the right thing tomorrow. That's what we have for ethics. I apologize for all of my stumbles. I will try not to record anymore after I do long lessons and long lecture days. All right, friends, stay safe out there.